Hey, welcome to the Hell Has an Exit podcast. I'm your host, Bryan Alzate. This show is not affiliated with any specific 12-step program. If you or a loved one is struggling with an addiction, please find a local 12-step meeting. If you believe you may need detox or drug treatment of any kind, please call 888-699-9395 to speak to a specialist. The show is sponsored by United Recovery Project, a state-of-the-art drug and alcohol rehab facility. You can visit our website at unitedrecoveryproject.com. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to Hell Has an Exit and listening to part 1 of Hell Has an Entrance. I'm your host, Bryan Alzate. Remember guys, if you want to ask a question, please go to your Apple Podcast and leave a 5-star rating with your question in the review. Tell a friend to subscribe, rate, and review. This is Hell Has an Exit. You can follow us on Instagram. If you have any questions, you can also DM us. If you're struggling for help, you can always go to unitedrecoveryproject.com. And thanks, guys. Appreciate it. I'm Bryan, and I'm an addict. And this is my story. But before we start with my story, I'd like to invite everybody to do a moment of silence. Take a deep breath. Close your eyes, unless you're driving. If you're driving, keep your fucking eyes open. If you're not driving, close your eyes, plant your feet, relax your shoulders. And just give it a second to just sit with your body, feel comfortable in your own skin. If you have a thought, just let it go. If you have another thought, just watch it go. And eventually you'll be able to focus on the space between your thoughts. All right, thank you. So my story is just like everyone else's story. I live to use and used to live. I'm going to do this as fast as I can, as efficient as I can. I've been speaking since I was 17 years old. I'm no stranger to speaking. I've spoken at women's prisons. I've spoken at max security prisons. I've spoken at juvenile detention centers. I've spoken at probably over 1,000 meetings. Getting to share my story is something that is truly a gift. I say that because people share their story with me, and it was people's stories that really made me think that this was possible. You know, it was hearing other addicts talk about their life in a way that was so raw and real that there was no doubt in my mind that these people were telling the truth. You know, when I went to a meeting and people were talking about the crack pipe being 1 inch, broken, blacked out, coughing, that char nastiness up, I was just like, God damn. You know, I heard people talking about smoking crack in cardboard boxes, women sucking dick for $5, you know, jumping in and out of cars, you know, prostituting themselves on the street. And I would get to know these people, and these people really saved my life. I really owe everything I have in my life to God and the 12 steps and the 12 traditions. Everything from the socks on my feet, to the shirt on my back, to the house I live in, to the car I drive, to my cell phone, to the wallet. You know, everything I have in my life I really owed to having a sponsor, working steps, making meetings the center of my schedule, you know, prioritizing recovery. And it's a program that's pretty free, so it doesn't really cost much to be there. You put $1 in the basket and you can enter in my opinion, the most amazing program, spiritual program that there is. And my goal in life is to share this message with other addicts and other people. If you're listening to this show and you're struggling, keep struggling. Just keep struggling. You know, eventually you're going to persevere and you're going to make it one day. And I try to tell that to everyone I come across, because I truly believe that the homeless person on the street can get clean. I really believe the guy at the methadone clinic for 20 years can get clean. I believe the 17-year-old can get clean. I believe the 56-year-old can get sober, whatever. You know, I believe that, like, whoever you are, how long you're using, whatever it is, you can get clean. You can change your life. You never, ever have to use again. You don't ever have to feel used again. if you want to change your life and stop going to prison, you can do it right here, right now, one day at a time by working the steps and getting involved and having a higher power. Like, you can change your life. When I got clean, I didn't believe in God. When I got clean, I thought God was for weirdos. I thought it was strange. I thought it was like an imaginary friend. I thought people who believed in God were crazy. My mom believed in God my whole life. My mom was very, very Christian. I remember smoking crack all night, and my mom would be banging on my door, and she would, she'd have like a little thing to unlock the door, and she'd break in, and she'd see my face all bugged out, and she'd start crying, and she would take me to church, and she'd have people come over from the church, and they would pray over me. I just thought she was so crazy. But my mom was really the only person that really held on the entire time. Like, she never got tired of holding on. She never, when I had court, she took me to court. When I went to jail, she picked me up from jail. When I got sent to military school, she picked me up from military school. When I had to go to probation, she took me to probation. My mom was just, and it was never like an inconvenience, I remember principals calling her and saying, your son was caught with drugs. You got to come pick him up. My mom never acted inconvenienced. My mom never acted like this was too much. She was always there. And I remember, like, my mom sells life insurance. She works. She busts her ass my whole life. And I remember she'd come to school in her briefcase and in her work, her work clothes. And I'd be fucked up, or I'd be getting arrested or something. And she would sit with me and tell me that one day I was going to get clean, and my mom would tell me that one day things are going to change, and she would pray with me, and I really, really just thought she was crazy. And I love my mom to death, even like during all my using. I could say today, like, my mom really is a part of like who I am today, and has helped me, really see what unconditional love is. And sometimes I don't think that shit's even healthy, I was 17 when I got clean. So at some point it's like, yeah, I was still like a minor. But like, sometimes I feel like when someone turns 18 or they're in their 20s or 25 or whatever, it's time to let that kid go. And I don't mean like you stop loving an addict. But what I tell people all the time is like, if you have an addict living at your house and they're, over 18, you need to kick them the fuck out. Like, I tell parents all the time, kick them out. And a lot of times, you have the, enablers say, oh, that's my baby, I can't kick them out. But in my honest opinion, 9 times out of 10, I truly believe that an addict will not get clean if they still have resources. And if I have a place to live and I got a little money in my pocket, why would I ever stop using? And I know many addicts that say that, the turning point for them was when mom wasn't answering their calls no more. It was when mom wasn't answering their calls from jails no more. Mom wasn't letting you stay at their house no more. They told you to go to halfway. I have friends that their family didn't talk to them for years. I believe in tough love, And speaking of tough love, that's like when my father comes in the picture. Growing up, my father was like my greatest hero. I loved my father as a kid. And I remember being a young kid. My father's really into music, like crazy into music. And I remember being a kid and I would sit shotgun with him and we'd go and run errands and we'd be listening to like Michael Jackson and like all these crazy bands. Like, he loves like American rock. We'd be singing the songs together. And I remember just being a kid and really like looking up to my dad, thinking like he could do no wrong in my eyes. Being the youngest of the family, I got an older brother and older sister. My parents were pretty lenient with me. I think they were more strict with my older sister, kind of strict with my brother. And then when I was around and was like, hey, you can kind of do whatever you want as long as you're home on time, you get good grades, and your room's clean. As a young kid, I really found myself skating. I loved rollerblading. I loved skating. I remember being in 2nd or 3rd grade, and I'd be going to Brian Piccolo skate park in Cooper City, and I remember skipping school. I remember being like 2nd grade, and like I used to skate to school, and there was times where I'd be like, fuck school, I'm gonna go to the skate park. And I would go to the skate park, and there'd be like nobody there, one person working, and they'd be like, aren't you supposed to be in school? And I remember just like looking them dead in the eye and being like, no, I'm from Canada. And I'm here on vacation, and the guy would be like, whatever, and he would let me in, and I'd go skate, and then I'd come back home. And I got away with that. As a young kid, I was just like into mischief. Like, I don't know what it was, but I remember coming home one day, and there was a bike near a lake, and I was riding my bike home from school, and there was like this brand new nice bike with pegs right by the lake, just laid down. Nobody was there. And I got off my bike, and I went up to the other bike, and I just pushed that shit right into the lake. And then across the lake, there was these kids jumping on a trampoline, and they were like, hey, that's my bike. And I was like, oh shit. So I jumped on my bike, and I rode home. And like for a year, I took the long way home, you know. I remember late at night when we'd have like a sleepover, we'd ride our bikes down the street, and I'd be on the back of someone's pegs. And I would get a baseball bat, and we'd smash all the mailboxes in the neighborhood. And as I got older, we would like paintball cars and doorbell ditch houses. And we'd play football in hurricanes, you know, and we'd skimboard. And up until like fourth grade, like, obviously I'm doing this with older kids. You know, I had a brother who was like a year and a half older, and I have like a kid across the street that was older. And this other kid that lived next door, he had like an older cousin. And I say all that to say that I don't think that makes me an addict. I don't think that because I like to play with fire as a kid and doorbell ditch houses that I was destined to be an addict. But I do believe that I was born an addict. And I believe that I did a lot of things to fit in. I was really obsessed with trying to be cool. And really deep down inside was like really insecure. But the insecurity didn't really come out until I moved away from the skate park. And I moved into another neighborhood in Davie in fourth grade. And, you know, I remember my first day there, I was riding my bike, and I had like a BMX bike where I could spin the handlebars and I could do a bunny hop. And I was doing that outside, and I got some other kids' attention. They're like, oh, cool bike, whatever. And we started hanging out. All the other kids in the neighborhood, like none of them skated, BMX'd, or skateboarded, you know. They all played sports. And I remember like the first day, I had like 5 or 6 friends already. We're all talking and hanging out. My dad was just laughing like, look at Bryan, he's already making all these friends. And I was a social kid. As time went on, like, I think like sometimes we'd fuck around and skateboard. But for the most part, people in my neighborhood played sports. And I hated playing sports. I was so terrible at them. I have like such ADHD when I play sports. Like, after 20 minutes of playing a sport, I'm just like thinking about tomorrow, and like I'm just like airheaded when it comes to sports. I just can't pay attention long. And I was like the worst one on the team, and I would get picked last, and I'd get bullied, and people would peg the ball at me, and like every time we played, I'd cry, and I'd get tackled too hard. It was to a point where like I didn't want to go play. I remember there was times where like kids would come over to my house to get my brother to go play football. I'd pretend to be asleep, and they'd be like, where's Bryan? And he'd be like, oh, he's sleeping. And someone from the neighborhood would jump on top and be like, wake up, faggot, we're going to go play fucking football. And I'd be like, oh, I don't want to. And they'd start fucking punching me and shit, and I'd get up and I'd go play. And they'd be like, you're not going to cry this time, are you? And I'd be like, no, fuck you, I'm not going to cry. I would get tackled and start crying. You know, I have friends that are older now that are like, yeah, you know, wasn't a surprise when Bryan became a drug addict because he got bullied so bad as a kid. I did kind of get like messed with like my older friends, but at the same time, like if I ever needed anything from like one of my older friends, like the same kid that would bully me, if someone ever tried me, he'd fight them and fuck them up, you know. Growing up, that's just kind of how kids, even men, that's how men kind of interact with each other. They kind of put each other down, you know. I went to a Tony Robbins convention, and he was saying that like, you know, women walk around like, oh no, your butt is bigger. No, your butt's bigger. No, you got the biggest butt ever. And guys are like, shut up, loser. Everyone knows my butt's the biggest. And, you know, that's kind of how men are. They kind of, they really compete with each other. And I didn't know that growing up. I thought there was something wrong with me. I didn't want to be good at sports. I had nothing I was really good at. And then one day this kid moved into a neighborhood. He had like a mohawk, a spiked belt. He skated and all this shit, and he was just like a punk rocker. And I was probably in 4th, 5th grade. He was like in 7th grade. I remember I'd go to his house, and all the lights would be off. And his parents would like drink in the middle of the day and smoke cigarettes. And in 4th grade, I smoked cigarettes with this kid. And I remember, I didn't even know how to inhale. And we'd be hanging out and, he had a go-ped and we'd like ride his go-ped around and we'd smoke at like these houses that were still under construction and we'd spray paint like the word fuck you on them and, just being like kind of like little rebels. I remember the first time I got caught smoking cigarettes. I came home one day and my dad hugged me and he could smell it in my hair. And I had washed my hands a bunch of times. I changed my clothes. And my dad was like, "You're smoking cigarettes?" And I was like, No. I'm at my friend's house and his parents smoke. And my dad is pretty hip to the game. He was like, "Nah, bro, you're smoking." And I was like, "No, I'm not smoking." I learned how to hide. I learned how to lie. I got really good at lying. And I remember being able to, I remember we started smoking weed. I remember we'd smoke weed and I would bring gloves and I'd bring Visine and I'd bring cologne and we'd go behind like this dumpster or whatever and we'd smoke the joint. And then I would like rub my hands on the grass and I would get some of his gasoline from his go-ped and I'd put it all over my clothes and I'd put some in my hair and I'd put Visine in my eyes. And I remember he'd be like, "All right, we're going to go home and watch cartoons now." And I was like, sweet. But like I was still watching cartoons at that age, he wanted to do it because we were high. I don't remember the first time I smoked weed. Like I don't remember like what it felt. I just remember that this was cool. And while everyone else started like playing sports and getting better at basketball and stuff, I started hanging out with like more of the misfit crowd. I remember being in like 6th grade and my brother had older friends and they were all over and they were smoking. And, like growing up, like my brother didn't really want me around, or that's how I felt, like whenever I would go into his room, he'd be like, "Get out of my room, you fucking faggot, get out of here, you fucking loser, get out." And I just like wanted to like hang out with his friends. And like a lot of times, like, the older brother didn't want his little brother around. And like we still hung out and stuff, but like I just remember being at that time where like his friends were all in his room and like, they kicked me out. And I remember being like, "Whatever, fuck you losers. I don't want to hang out with you anyways." And I could tell that they were trying to smoke. I could overhear their conversation that they were looking for like a piece or they were trying to make something. And even though I was like younger, I was probably like in 5th, 6th grade, I remember being on the side of the house and one of my brother's friends, he was out there and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Nothing." And I was like, "You guys trying to smoke?" And he was like, "What?" And I was like, "If you guys want to smoke, like I have a piece." And he was looking at me like, "You have a what?" And I was like, "A piece." And I pulled out like this little pipe that I had. And he was like, "Get the fuck out of here." And he started laughing. He's like, yo, Kevin's little brother smokes. What the fuck? And they were probably in 7th or 8th grade and I was in 5th grade. I got invited to the room, And really that's where like my addiction really started, was like trying to gain acceptance into like the next room. When I gained acceptance into my brother's room, I gained acceptance with like his friends and some of the like other people's friends. I had other people in the neighborhood that had older brothers that were like juniors in high school. And I realized that like the more weed I had, the more friends I had. And I learned how to manipulate people. And I remember being in 6th grade and I would buy like a half-eighth or whatever. And fucking weed's expensive in 6th grade, And I remember I would buy like a half-eighth and smoke it and need more money. And, I was really just getting money from like stealing some money from my dad. And then I learned how to take his debit card and I knew his PIN code and I would take like $100 out and I'd buy like, I don't know, a quarter. And I remember I used to bag it all up and I used to go on this website and I used to like read about weed. In 6th grade, I could make a bong out of anything. Like I literally could make a bong out of anything on the planet, And I remember I was smoking spoofs in my room, which is where you get like a toilet roll and you stuff one side of it with like air softener. And I used to smoke before school. In 6th grade, I'm pretty much smoking every day. I remember putting Visine in my eyes at school and cologne and having weed on me 24/7. I had friends who were driving, going to parties. And, at the time I had like a double tape and a blowout. All the girls were, talking to me or whatever. And I really felt like I was somebody. And when I do drugs, I like become them. And I started listening to Bob Marley and Bone Thugs and like all this rap music and, having $60 in my pocket and a quarter of weed. I thought I was the man. One thing about me is that like I don't really need much to do something. Like a lot of times in life, people want to do something. They need someone to go with them, or they need someone to show them how, or they need someone to like explain it to them. Till today, if I want to do something, I don't ask permission from nobody. I look it up myself. I figure it out and I just fucking do it. And I remember being a kid and I wanted to drive and I took my mom's keys and I drove. I was like, I really am like the kid who just wants to do hood rat things with his friends. Like I stole my mom's car in 5th grade. From 6th grade on, I was stealing the car all the time, stealing the car. And in 6th, 7th grade, I was driving on the weekends, driving at night, picking up girls, hooking up with girls, smoking. I think in 7th grade is when I really started going to like keg parties. And I remember like I would take my mom's car in 7th grade. I'd have like a half O of weed on me. And I'd be going to like some senior high school party. And I remember I'd pull up and serve people up, or like people knew me there, like at that time it was like people knew who I was. And people never really asked me how old I was. I think sometimes people thought I went to a different school. And I remember like hanging out with my friend and his older brother and his older friends. And, we'd be selling weed, driving around, getting weed. And, I was very good at like networking. I always had like 3 or 4 different people who could get bud. And even in 7th grade, I was super snobby. Like, I didn't just get, like, any type of weed. Like, I definitely was never, ever smoking fucking regs. If you smoked regs, like, we fucking clowned on you. Only Crippy, Crippy, funk. You could tell when it was, like, hydroponic, AK-47, chandeliers, lemon train wreck. I was really into getting like funky weed. I was really snobby about my weed. If you came around and had shitty weed, I was just like, get the fuck out of here. I remember being in the car with my friends and like I was sitting in the back seat and I'm hanging out with people that are like 18, 19 years old. And I remember them like realizing how young I am because they're like, yo, we're going to pick you up tomorrow from school. And I was like, oh, I don't get out of school till like 4. They were like, what? And I was like, yeah, I still go to Indian Ridge. And they were like, oh shit, we forgot how young your ass was. What the fuck? They were like, damn dog, like the person we buy weed from is in fucking middle school. That's crazy. And, I remember like 3 6 Mafia was real big that back then. We were listening to 3 6 Mafia and Lil White. And Lil White had that song, Oxycontin. 3 6 Mafia had that song, Bin Laden Weed. And, my friend Albert had a car and, we were just like having fun, man. Like I really think about that time where I was like going to parties, getting fucked up on somebody's lawn. And when I talk about parties, like I remember being 7th grade going to a party in Weston Hills. No idea whose fucking house it was. The parents would be there. They'd be having a jug where everyone collects people's keys because they don't want people to drink and drive. The parents were like the mean girl's mom, like, oh, I'm a cool mom. And fucking there'd be a nitrous tank on the fucking front lawn. There'd be 200 kids outside, 50 cars outside, crazy music bumping, everyone screaming, laughing, having a good time. People doing keg stands, blunts getting rolled in the backyard, people getting pushed in the pool, fights getting broken out, the cops would come, everyone would dip out and go to Waffle House. We all meet up at Waffle House. Fucking, there'd be like some girl getting fucked in the bathroom, like some kids fighting in the parking lot. And then like we dip out from the Waffle House and we go to the Shell in Weston. It'd be like, people used to call it like Club Shell. We'd all meet up there and then go to the other house party. There was a time when there was like an abandoned house off Volunteer. We used to just party at this abandoned house. There was some kid in Davie who used to throw the craziest party. He would be throwing like foam pit parties. This is a fucking foam pit. This one time it was like catered by Wendy's. And bro, I'm talking like 12 years old, fucking twisting up blunts in the back of cars, selling people weed, making money, coming home all fucked up. And my parents kind of just laughed it off. And I always had a good story. And I was always out. And, oh, we're having a sleepover or whatever, sneaking out. I really felt like I was the coolest kid in town. Like I really did. Like I thought, I used to watch boiler room, and I used to have these dreams of like me and all my friends becoming millionaires and all this shit, and making money or whatever. 7th grade, I got arrested for the first time. And me and this kid Izzy were smoking in the bathroom. This kid was like some foreign exchange kid that like just came to school, and everyone used to make fun of him because he was foreign, but I just thought he was cool. Like, because when I talked to him, like, yeah, he had an accent and he dressed kind of dorky, but he dressed like preppy, but like, I know kids that dress preppy. Like, a lot of my older friends were dressing preppy at the time, like you'd have a kid in American Eagle that was like, just because you dressed preppy didn't mean that you were soft or something growing up, I saw all my friends transition from like Echo to fucking Abercrombie, and there were still like tough kids that would fight you and fuck you up. So this kid kind of dressed preppy, and he told me he had like an older brother and he was into like techno. And like back then, like in 7th grade, nobody was into techno. No one even knew what that shit was. But I knew what it was because I would go to like the all age clubs and raves and shit as a kid and like try to holler at girls. And I remember we were talking, I was like, yeah, I get weed or whatever. And like, I remember I had like bud in an Altoids case. I'll say it again. I had funky ass bud in 7th grade. And like, there are kids that are grown now, 30 years old, and they'll still tell you like, I don't know what Bryan Alzate used to get in middle school, but that kid had some funk. I remember I opened up my Altoids case and this kid was like, God damn, what is that? And I was like, that's weed, bro. And he was looking at it. It looked all crazy. I remember like we had planned to smoke in school once during PE. And at the time I had like 20 baggies in my backpack, and like me and my friend Albert had just thrown down on like our first half O. Up until that point I was buying like quarters or whatever, or I would just like take someone's money and buy a half O for them or buy an O with them or whatever, but I wasn't really like me myself buying an O or a half O. And I remember me and my friend Albert put up the money. We bought like a half O of some fire, and I was selling it. I had little baggies of 5 with little markers, 5s and 10s, and I was selling it to a couple people in school, skimping the fuck out of everybody, selling them like .2s for like $10. I remember we were smoking in the bathroom in PE, and I was like, all right, bro, we're going to like take a couple hits and then go outside. And what I would do is I had like this one little hitter pipe that had like a lid on it. So you could like close the lid after it was cherry. And I remember closing the lid. I take a big hit and I hold it in. Like you can, like me and my boys used to smoke in movie theaters as a kid. Like if you have this one little hitter pipe, you can take a hit, hold the air in, and like the air would kind of like dissipate in your lungs and you wouldn't really let out a big cloud of smoke. And I remember like hitting the pipe or whatever, taking a big hit, holding it in, like showing him like, all right, bro, don't like let out all the smoke like an idiot. And he takes one hit and just starts coughing smoke everywhere. And he takes another hit, coughing smoke everywhere. I'm like, bro, you're an idiot. So then like whatever, we walk outside, and then the baseball team had a game that day. So they're walking inside and all these little jits are like, oh, we smell marijuana in here. Oh, it smells like marijuana. And I'm like, God damn. So I remember the PE coach is like, these are the last 2 to come out the locker room. And they search our locker room. I remember the security guard found my Altoids case, and he found like my little bags of weed, and they found like $100 in my wallet and like 5s and 10s. Up until that point, me and my father had a really good relationship. But when my father came to school, like I was laughing and joking before he showed up. I remember they were like, you're going to go to jail. This is going to be on your permanent record. And like to me, like I knew the law. I remember telling this lady straight up, I was like, that's only 18 grams. It's not over 21 grams. 21 grams is trafficking. You can get me on possession. She was like, it's all in little baggies, so we got you on trafficking. It doesn't need to be 21 grams. I was like, I'm fucking 13 years old. You don't think they're going to drop that shit in court? That shit's going to get dismissed. And I was like, you could do whatever you want. And like, I really was like acting like I was Al Capone or like somebody like tough or somebody. As soon as my dad walked in, like that smirk on my face got wiped off, and he was not playing no games. He said, where did you get this from? And I was like, I don't know. He says, you're going to give me a name or we're going to sit here all day. I was like, I got it from some guy at the mall. He goes, okay, you got it from some guy at the mall. He like gets a piece of paper. He draws a mall on there, circles it. And he goes, who did he get it from? What's his name? And I'm like, what the fuck? And he's like, I need to know, like, he was trying to find the source, like where this shit came from. And he was like really screaming and yelling at me, you're gonna fuck up your whole life. You could go to jail for this shit. You ain't never gonna get a job. And I remember the security guard being like, damn, this is a really good parent, you know? And I remember the police officer, Officer Arndt, was like, wow, I can't believe, like, this is your son. I'm so sorry this has happened, but you seem like a really good parent, and, like, you never, you know, you won't realize how many parents come in that don't give a fuck, and, like, at least we could tell that you care. And I remember, like, the principal, his name was Miss Brown. Miss Brown walked in, and she was like, I cannot believe it was one of my best students, because I always got good grades. And then she was like, and of all weeks, Red Ribbon Week, Brian, Red Ribbon Week, you do this shit? And I was like, what the fuck is Red Ribbon Week? I didn't know what Red Ribbon Week was for like years, but I guess it's like Drug Awareness Week or some shit. My dad takes me home and I get like my first like suspension or whatever. My dad is screaming at me in the car. Fucking screaming. You're never allowed to go outside ever. Give me your fucking phone. You're never going anywhere. You're not going to be shit. You got me coming picking you up. Da 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 da. Bro, he was really mad, like really fucking mad. Breaking shit when we got home. Called the whole family to sit down and talk to me. And the whole family was worried. And I remember not believing, like, this is really my life. Like, this is really happening right now. And I told my friends, and they were like, damn, dog, you know, that sucks. But whatever, you know, you want to come out tonight? You know, like, people don't really care. Like, your friends don't really give a fuck that you got arrested. And then they were like, you know, you're dumb as fuck to be smoking in school. You got to smoke after. But all I really cared about was, like, when the next party was and, like, what we doing this weekend and sneaking out still. Just because I was grounded. Like, I knew my dad had, like, a tighter eye on me, but I just kept doing the same shit. But what did change was I started having to pee in a cup. And I had to go to, like, some diversionary program, which was, like, my first real stint in, like, an IOP. And I did, like, 6 months of this IOP where I'd have to pee in a cup. Bro, I remember going to parties and everybody smoking. I'd just be sitting there like, nah, I can't smoke no more. Everybody like, damn, that sucks. Oh, you can't smoke. I'd be in the backseat of a car. Everyone's fogging it out. I'd be lowering the window, trying to breathe out. They'd be like, yo, stop. We're trying to hotbox the car. I'm like, bro, I'm on probation. I can't smoke. And then fucking, you know how it goes. It sucked. Not like everyone's like, bro, you can't smoke. And I remember just being like, what am I going to do? I can't smoke. And I'm like, fuck. And this one day, my friend had his friend over, and these kids were older. People like think of Weston as like a pretty rich area, but there were some like little parts of Weston that have like small townhouses and shit. And there was people that moved there to get out of the hood that were still kind of like, they were bad kids, bro. I don't know how to say it. Like, these kids didn't give a fuck, you know? And I remember this kid left coke at my house. And he called me. So he went to the mall with my friend, and I had to stay home for some reason. And he was like, yo, I left something in your desk. Don't touch it. So I go to look at it, and it's coke. And it's, like, balled up into a ball. Like a legit, like it was like a gram of coke, and he like rolled it into a ball. So this is how unskilled he was at cutting coke, where he literally cut it and then rolled it into a ball, like with some sticky, I don't even know what the fuck he used, but it was horrific coke. He's like, don't touch it. And I was like, coke? Who the fuck has coke? I've never even seen coke. It's like middle of like 7th grade. And he's like, yeah, don't touch my yay. And like, that's what we used to call back then, like, yay. And I was like, I can't believe this kid has coke. You know, I remember just looking at it and looking at it and be like, how do you even do this? And when he came home, I was like, bro, let me buy that off you. And he was like, what do you want? You want a dub? And I was like, a dub? The fuck's a dub? And he's like, a dub, a 20. And I was like, how much is that? He's like, well, this is 40. This is a gram. And I was like, $40 for that? Get the fuck out of here. Who the fuck would pay $40 for that? And he was like, well, I'll give you a dub. I remember thinking, like, he cut it in half and gave me half of it. And I remember my friend got a credit card. And you don't really use a credit card because there's the indentations with the numbers. So you want to use, like, a school ID or something really flat. And he taught me, like, I remember, like, you know, we locked the door. My parents were home. And he got it all flat on the table. And he taught me, like, you want to press it and get it real flat and get all the bumps out of it. And then, you get another card to scrape it off the other card. And then you cut it into little lines. But you got to make sure it's really flat first. Get all the little rocks out of it. Chop it up into like fine powder. Then you break out the lines. I got a dollar bill, $20. Actually, I got like a $100 bill from him. I remember he was snobby. He's like, "Oh, I don't put ones in my nose, dog. Like the fuck? Nah, bro, it's disgusting, bro. Only snort yay with hundreds." That's what kind of friends I had, like these snobby, fucked up kids with money. Growing up, some of my friends with money were way more fucked up than my friends that lived in trailer parks, This is one of my close friends that lived in Weston Hills. Him and his brother sold weed. They did coke, I've known them since I was 4th grade. And I remember he comes over and this is what happens. And he teaches me how to, you put the $100 bill in your left nostril and you close your right nostril and you snort it. I thought it would burn. I thought it would hurt, but it really didn't feel like anything. And I was like, "What do I do now?" And he's like, "You just chill." And I literally thought I didn't feel anything. And then he left, and I snorted the rest of it, and I played Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. I remember thinking that was a total waste of money. I don't feel anything. And for some reason, I was affecting to feel some type of high, like marijuana, where I'd feel fucked up. All I remember was I played San Andreas till 4 a.m. And I called him and was like, "Yo, I did that coke. I didn't feel anything." He's like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "I don't know. I didn't feel anything. I just stayed awake all night." He's like, "That's kind of what it does." And I was like, "That's it?" He was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "That's coke?" He was like, "Yeah." And I was like, this whole time I was scared of coke. That shit's nothing. And then, did it again. And I did it again. And I did it again. And I did it again. You're talking about 12, 13 years old. I got an 8-ball on me everywhere I go. I don't smoke weed anymore. To me, I think smoking weed is some duck shit. If you smoke weed, you're a fucking idiot. I'm just not into, some of my boys smoked, but I wasn't smoking weed. Smoking weed was just a waste of money. It makes you high, it makes you slow, it makes you stupid. I was fucking with yay. I remember I had my boy that I met. I met him at Movico, and we actually knew each other. I remember we were hanging out at Movico, and he had a Celtics jersey on. He had a blowout, and we were talking. And I knew this kid because we used to play. We used to do karate together when we were in 2nd grade, and he's 4 years older than me. And he's like, "Yo, what up, dog?" And I'm just like, "Yo, what's good?" And he's like, "I haven't seen you in forever, bro." And we're just like, "Yeah." And he was like, "What you doing?" And I was chilling, just at the movies, whatever. And he's like, "Word, whatever." And then a few weeks later, he comes over to my house with my friend, the kid from Weston Hills, the same kid. And he's like, "Oh shit, what's up, dog? I don't know you were cool with Ray Ray. I didn't know you knew Ray Ray. What's up?" And we're just talking, and he's just he doesn't ask if anyone's home, if my parents are home or anything. He just comes through and fucking slaps a 8-ball of coke on my kitchen counter where my family eats dinner and cuts up food and shit. And he's chopping up yay. And he's like, "Oh, you want to do a line, dog? What's up?" Ever since, that's kind of how it was, for a couple of years. It was doing coke at each other's houses, fucking, bro, we would do coke in the open anywhere, selling coke at parties. And when I started doing coke, I started to meet a whole nother crowd of people. I remember being in 7th, 8th grade, driving to Miami at some fucking club, meeting some people in their 30s or 40s to buy coke off them. And we'd be on a rooftop club. No one ID'd me. No one gave a fuck. People drinking, fucking girls dancing, doing coke in the bathroom. And then when I would go to parties, it was I remember picking up this girl from school, and I was in 8th grade, and I've been doing coke already. I was thought I was a veteran. And I remember I pick her up in my mom's car. I stole my mom's car, picked her up. And I was like, "Yo, I've got to go to this party real quick." And she was like, "What, a party?" And I was like, "Yeah." What the fuck you think it was? And she was like, "Am I going to know anyone there?" And I was just like, "I don't know, let's just go." And she was all nervous to go to some party. And I remember we go to this party, and it's a high school party, it's people in seniors. I think it was Archbishop MacArthur party, some kid's house, and fucking not Hawks Landing, but like a neighborhood like Hawks Landing, like some big ass house and shit. And I remember like there's people drinking downstairs, there's people getting fucked up, and people doing kegs and smoking. But upstairs, there's a whole nother like underground world of people upstairs. And upstairs, you got like the owner of the house who's really just some kid we used to throw parties at his house. And then you got like me, my one friend I was talking about, Tony, this other kid, Chris, like people that like at that time I thought were like part of the cool kids club. Like those were the kids that sold drugs, bought drugs, and like you didn't rob. But anyone outside of that circle, like they were getting robbed, they were getting skimped, they were getting beat up, like whatever it was. Like if you weren't part of like this clique of us, you just were like a herb. Like that's just what we thought of you. You were fucking nobody, like whatever. And I go there and I'm in because I've known my friend Ray, you know, since I was a kid. And that's not his real name. That's like one of the nicknames we had for him. And like I remember I go there, I meet him, I say, "What's up?" And there's people bagging up coke and like these little, like these Batman baggies. And everyone's like, "Who the fuck is this?" And he's like, "Oh, it's my boy." And like, you know, I say what's up to everybody. And there's like some girls there and shit. We were just chilling there doing coke, talking shit, doing coke, talking shit. Growing up, like there's a story of like one of my close friends had stabbed somebody, and like another kid got stabbed or like beat up, or like the conversation was like who went to jail, who stabbed who, who's on the run, who's got beef with this person, who's fucking this kid's girl, you know, smoking cigarettes, of course. You know, I smoked Newports and did coke. That's basically all I did back then. Sometimes I would run into my old marijuana friends, like the kids I used to smoke weed with, and they would be like, "Bro, Brian's bad now." Like my older friends that were in college, like by the time I was in 8th grade, my old friends were already in college. I remember those kids would be like, "Yeah, Brian's bad now. He's like, he does yay. He's all skeeted out all the time. He fucking hangs out with these kids." As much as like people talk shit, like I had friends that, in my opinion, like at the time, I thought like we were like the tough kids, you know? I was really just getting started and I fell in love with coke. Like I love coke. And I finished that probation. They didn't even check for coke. Like that's how stupid this probation was. Like they only tested me for marijuana. By the end of 8th grade, I was fucking doing coke, selling coke, obsessed with it. I remember doing it like Wednesday mornings. And then even my friends that did coke used to be like, "Bro, how much coke are you doing?" And I used to just be like fucked up at 9 a.m, haven't slept, did like a quarter to my face. And they'd be like, "Bro, what's wrong with you?" And like I could see, I was like, "Bro, you guys do coke too." But they were like, "Bro, we don't do it like that." And like some of my friends would save coke for the next day. And I thought that was crazy. Like, I could like, what the, who saves coke for the next day? Beginning of 9th grade, you know, I don't really have a lot of friends in school. Like my friends graduated high school 2 years ago. And like my current friends all go to different schools or they've graduated. Really don't talk to anybody, but I start hanging out with some of my brother's friends. Got them all on coke too, you know? And in 9th grade, my dad drug tested me randomly. I failed for everything except for opiates. And I guess I had rolled. Like I would do ecstasy every once in a while. Like I'd go like hang out with my boy Tony. We'd go to like my friend Tony was up on like club scene before anyone else. He was going to like the all age clubs. We had fake IDs. We'd be going to fucking Automatic Slims on Las Olas. Like I remember being in 8th grade going to Automatic Slims, and like the Hard Rock just got built. We'd be going to the Hard Rock and fucking just like staying out all night. And I remember he was like the first kid in the group to like rock Ed Hardy and Lacoste and all this shit. That's why I had like a whole bunch of drugs in my system. I even had weed in my system just because I randomly happened to smoke. And my dad loses it. And like since then, me and my dad have started arguing over and over. Bro, I would come home drunk on Xannies. I would come home fucked up. I started drinking OEs randomly and fucking being barred out and coming home fucked up on my lawn. And I remember this one time, like me and all my friends all did Xanax, all drank, all went to a party. And each of us, like in my neighborhood, woke up on our lawns. Everyone like woke up outside. I don't know how we got home. And I remember like I got out the car and punched like a Burger King window. And I remember I was punching this Burger King drive-through window because they weren't open. My knuckles were all bloody. And I remember I woke up the next day covered in rice. And I guess I had eaten rice in the day before and threw up rice all over myself in my sleep or whatever. And my dad was so mad. And my dad called all my friends' parents and had them all come over to my house. And my dad was like, okay, who got the pills? And all my friends were like, we got them from Bryan. And my dad is like, my son's the youngest. Like, my son's fucking 13, 14. You guys are like 18. How the fuck does Bryan get the pills? And like, at one point, he probably thought like they were lying. But they were like, yeah, I mean, Bryan's the one who like gets us to do all this shit. That's when I started to notice that like I was kind of like the ringleader of even like my older friends. You know, during that time, I kind of like stepped away from those friends. Because even those friends were like, bro, you're too crazy. Like, you're doing coke all the time. I get this drug test and I'm positive for everything except for opiates. And I thought it was like opium. I thought opium was like what Edgar Allan Poe smoked. Like, I didn't think that people did opium these days. Like, who the fuck does opium, you know? So I remember, like, I think my parents are going to ship me off to rehab or something. And I'm tripping. Like, my dad is furious. He's breaking furniture. He's screaming. He's yelling. He's ripping things off the wall. He's telling me I'm a piece of shit. I'm never going to amount to anything, that I'm going to end up in prison. And now that I'm older, like, my dad's seen a lot in his life, and he probably knew where this was going. And I just didn't think it was going anywhere other than, like, just having fun. And he sent me to a military school in 9th grade. And I remember my parents didn't tell me anything. They were like, pack your bags. I was like, for what? They're like, you need to pack for, like, 7 days. And I was like, 7 days? And I was like, am I going to rehab? My mom was just like, here, I'll pack for you. She starts putting shit in a bag. And I felt like I had fucked up so many times. Like, every week, like, something, I was getting caught stealing in the car. The police were coming to the house. So I was like, no room to argue. I was like, whatever. And my parents started driving. You know, I used to make a joke that my parents told me that I was going to Disney World and dropped me off at this military school. But they really didn't say where we were going. But it was up in Melbourne. And I get dropped off at this school. And it's an co-ed Air Force Academy. And it's called FAA, Florida Air Academy. And they started explaining the program. We do a tour. My dad signs some paperwork. And my dad pays for, like, additional money for me to do, like, some flight program where they'll teach me how to fly an airplane. And my dad financed this over, like, 30 years. My parents leave me. And as soon as they leave, I feel so much relief. Because my parents are really the ones who are on me, because I can't really, like, lie to them anymore. Like, they're just too on me. And I look at the school, and I'm like, this ain't going to be so bad. I remember they, like, show me my room, and there was a lot of Mexican kids there. Like, for some reason, it just, like, I always thought Mexicans to be, like, even like, I'm half Mexican, and I used to just think of, like, Mexicans as, like, brown people, you know? But there was a ton of Mexicans at this school that were, like, white as snow. And really preppy, like, real preppy Mexicans. Like, I think about, like, my mom's side of the family, and they're not. They're, like, poor Mexicans. But here was, like, rich Mexicans. And I remember going to my room, and everyone's like, oh, you're in the room with Diaz. And I'm like, who the fuck is Diaz? They're like, oh, Diaz. Oh, he's crazy. He's Mexican mafia related. His family's in the Mexican mafia. Da, da, da. He's not going to like that you're his roommate. He doesn't like having roommates. So I was like, oh, yeah, I don't really care. So I'm thinking, like, Mexican mafia. I'm thinking, like, someone who's, like, 6'1", 200 pounds, covered in tattoos or something. And even in 9th grade, I was pretty big for my age. Even though I didn't like to play sports, I always liked working out. So even like on coke, I could still bench like 185 pounds. And I was still like in the weight room and stuff, even on drugs at that time. So I was still like pretty fit and a big kid. This kid, I remember him sleeping on the top bunk. And there's like a bunk with like, it's like a small room with like 4 bunks. And underneath is like a desk. And I'm sleeping in my room. And this kid Diaz walks in. And he's like, who the fuck is this motherfucker? And then I just like pretend not to hear him. He's like, yo, I'm talking to you. And I'm just like not even hearing, like not trying to hear him. and he throws a basketball at my bunk. And I was like, bro, just stop. And he's like, what's your fucking name? And some kid's like, oh, that's Alzate. He's like, oh, Alzate, where are you from? And I'm just looking at this kid like, bro, I don't fucking know. Like, I don't give a fuck where you're from. Or I don't want to talk to you and tell you where I'm from. And I just like pretend to go back to sleep. And mind you, this kid Diaz is like 120 pounds, like 5'4", like scrawny kid. This other kid, Frenchie, walks in. And his name's Frenchie, but we call him Frances. And Frances walks in, and he's tall. He's like 5'11", whatever. And he's got dark skin. He definitely looks like a model. Like, he's just a pretty boy. He's like really good shape. This kid was like obsessed with working out in like 9th grade, 10th grade. And I remember he picks up the basketball, and Frances pegs it at me. And I jump down, and we start fighting. And I tackle this kid. Major John, who is like the supervisor over there, Major John walks in. He's like, what's going on in here? And they were like, bro, this kid's crazy. He jumped off the bunk and attacked us. And I was like, bro, it's my first day. These kids are like fucking throwing basketballs at me. So because it was my first day, he like sided with me, and the other kids got KP. And KP is like kitchen patrol, where you have to like clean the dishes. So when I'd be getting lunch, I'd be seeing these 2 kids cleaning the dishes and on kitchen patrol, and they'd be like grilling me. And I just like stayed away from them. And didn't talk to nobody my first week. I wanted to see who was who. And there was this kid, Roy, who was in our hallway, and he was a junior. So I was a freshman, Frances was a sophomore, and I think Diaz was like a sophomore too. And Roy was a junior. And Roy was flight captain or some shit, so he could lock his room, and he had his own room. And me and Roy became cool. And I remember being like, yo, I can get powder. And he was like, word? And I was like, yeah, I could get yay. And he thought I was lying. He was like, oh, cool. Yeah, a lot of kids say they can get that stuff, but they really can't. So I was like, well, I mean, how much do you want? He's like, bro, if you could bring that shit in here, these kids will pay whatever. So in military school, you can't leave at all. And you have canteen. So you have like these booklets of canteen to buy shit downstairs. But like, so the people at this school either have like bread from their parents, or they're here like the judge has appointed them to go to some military school for some reason. Like the county would pay like a certain percentage of people to go to this military school, and you had to wear a uniform. And some days you'd be dressed nice, like I think they're called like you'd be wearing, no, some days you'd be wearing like your fatigues, which is like your camo outfit with like your boots. And some days you'd be wearing like your flight outfit, where you'd be wearing like a flight jacket, dress pants, and like a dress shirt tucked in, and like a fucking one of those like beret hats, I forget. So at this school, you know, there's just like a big mixture of kids. And Roy was like this surfer kid from like Sebastian. He was like a beach kid, but he said he liked to do coke. And I was like, cool. So my mom would pick me up. So they would have like a once a month furlough, where this bus would let you go back home. Like once a month, it would like bus you back down to South Florida for kids, or up north for other kids. And I went back to my house, and I don't know what I did, but like I hustled somebody or robbed somebody, or I did something to come up with like $200. And I bought, I think a quarter. So like 2 8-balls were like a quarter of coke for like $1.80. And when I was doing coke, what I figured out was that with coke, you could buy an 8-ball for $100. You could cut half of it. You could get 2 grams for free, and then sell the other 2, and you still get $80 worth of coke basically for free, and still make your money back with the other, 1.8 grams, 2 grams, whatever it was. That's basically what I did from like 7th grade to 9th grade. Like I would buy an 8-ball, cut it, make my money back, whatever. So like I always had money, and then when I would like get really fucked up and do all of it by myself, which happened a lot, I would just take money from my dad. My dad had like an ATM card that like, bro, my dad never checked his bank account ever. Or like he just didn't know who was withdrawing the $100, if it was him or my mom. I have no idea. He like never noticed the $100 going missing every couple weeks. So I really could take like $100 whenever I wanted, or even $200 sometimes. I remember I bought a quarter, and they would search you when you came back. So I remember, because I liked working out, I brought protein, and I dug a hole in my protein, and I put the quarter of coke in the protein thing, and I went back to my bunk, and I pulled it out, and me and Roy started doing coke. And this is like my third week there, right? Like I'm already bringing coke in there. And he's like, I can't believe you have this much. I'm like, this is just like a little bit, you know? And he was just like, wow, this is crazy. And like, if you thought I was snobby about weed, like I was snobby about my yay. Like I wasn't buying no garbage yay. Like I was buying fish scale, funky, fucking tinted yellow, one rock. I'm not buying no like powder bag bullshit. Like I was buying funk, fire, smell it through the bag, sting your fucking nostrils, coke. The movie Blow had just came out. Like I thought I was George Jung. The Cocaine Cowboys had just came out. Like I really was like head deep into like coke. At military school, I would sell kids lines for $20, $30. They would pay whatever because no one can get it. It's like prison. Like people buy cigarettes for like a crazy amount of money. So like no one can get anything there. So like if you brought weed, people will buy weed for like $100 for like an eighth, not even like a fucking gram or some shit. They were crazy. And I would sell kids like little fucking dubs of coke for like $100. Sometimes I wouldn't even give them coke. Sometimes I would buy caffeine pills, crush them up, and fucking tell them it was coke, and fucking they would fucking buy it, you know? I started doing coke all the time in military school, all the time. It was just so easy. To the point where the Mexican kids used to call me Cocodrilo. So I remember these kids used to be like, oh, Cocodrilo, what's up? Cocodrilo, like, damn, this kid's like the coke king, whatever, is always doing coke. And I remember, like, I thought that was cool being called Cocodrilo. And I remember that kid, Frances, who was like, we didn't like each other. This one day, he comes up to me in the lunch line, and he goes, Alzate. And I was like, what's up? And he was like, bro, will you be my fucking friend? And I was like, what? And he was like, bro, I fucking hate all these kids here. I fucking hate all these motherfuckers. They're all fucking lame. He was like, bro, be my fucking friend, bro. And I was like, bro, I don't like you. And he was like, bro, all that shit is squashed. Like, fucking, he's like, he wanted me, like, to be his roommate because, like, his roommate had left. He's like, bro, let's link up in the same room. And I remember being like, nah, bro, I'm in Roy's room. Like, Roy lets me lock the door because he's like the flight captain or whatever. So he's like, you, me, and Roy will all live in the same room. So I talked to Roy, and like for a while it was me, Frenchie, and Roy. And most people had 4 people in a room. We had 3. And because Roy was the flight captain, he could lock his door. So like everyone else had to keep their door open. We could lock our door. We could do coke, like whatever. Bro, there were so many nights where I was just doing coke all night. And Frenchie never did coke. Roy would do it, but like quickly, after a while, he was like, bro, I'm not doing more of that shit. So I was just like me doing coke and selling it to like kids randomly. This one day, I'm just like, I just bought like a quarter. I'm almost done with it. And it's like the first day I have it. I'm like, bro, I just ran through like fucking this 8-ball so fast. I just got back to school. I'm going to be like fucked. Like, and there's this kid, we used to work out together. So at the time I'm still into working out. And this kid used to be into working out and like video games. And his room was like all video game geeks. Like all these kids played was like World of Warcraft. Their lights were never on. They all had like 10 sheets over their bunks because they would make like these weird tents and play video games in it. I go up to him. I was like, bro, I need something to go to sleep. So this kid was like the one kid in school who had all the pills because his brother sold pills or like worked at a pharmacy or something. Forget the story. And he always had like these weird ass pills. But like I never really did them. I just knew that he was into like pharmaceuticals. And he was super geeky, but I just knew he was cool. Like everyone else probably thought he was geeky, but I just liked this kid. And I remember I was like, bro, I can't sleep. Like, I have all this coke. I just want to go to sleep, bro. I don't want to do it all night. And he was just like, all right, bro, I'll give you these if you give me some coke. So I gave him like a dub of yay. And he gives me 3 Roxy 30s and 2 Oxy 40s. This is 9th grade. And the Oxy 40s, I think, were like yellow, and the Roxys were blue. They're the 8215 blues. So he gives me 2 40s and 3 Roxys, which at the time is way more than a dub of coke. He must like not really known how much he gave me, but it was like a lot of fucking pills. And he says to do one of the Roxys or one of the 40s, but don't do all of them. He looks me dead in the eye. He says, don't do more than that. And I was like, okay. I go to my room. I learned that you have to like peel the 40s. You have to like peel them or like lick them and rub them off. They have like this coating on them. And I crush up the 2 40s and the 3 Roxys all together. And I do all of them. And I don't even know what I felt at the time because it was my first time ever doing opiates. But I remember I got on the phone with this girl and just started talking to this girl like nonstop. I don't know what the fuck we're talking about, but I just like, we talked until like 6 in the morning. And when I got up, I was like, God, I'm fucking nauseous. And I was like, fuck, I'm really nauseous. And I hear the do like, well, like the thing they do in the morning at military school. And I'm like, fuck, is it morning already? I remember thinking like these pills would put me to sleep. Like I was looking for Xanax or like some type of landing gear, like Valium to fucking go to sleep. So I remember being like, fuck, it's morning? So I remember I go downstairs and my skin just feels like raw and I just feel so sick. And I remember thinking like I gotta eat something. So I remember I go downstairs and Frenchie is laughing and Roy is laughing and Diaz is laughing. At the time, like, now Diaz is cool. Me, Diaz, and Roy are like all friends and shit. They're laughing at me like, oh man, you look like shit, whatever. And I was just like, yeah. So I eat this food. And as soon as I finish eating my food, I throw it all up perfectly back on my plate. And I threw it up so fast that people around me didn't even notice that I threw up until later. They're like, wait, what is that? Did you just throw that up? And I remember just being like, I'm going to be fucking sick. And I remember I go to the infirmary and I tell the lady that I'm sick. And I lay down in the infirmary. And when I'm laying down, I feel fine. But as soon as I get up to drink water, I start throwing up. And I'm in there for like 1 day. And I'm in there for like the first day, right? So Frenchie comes to visit me in the infirmary. He's like, how you doing? And I was like, bro, bring me my geography book. And he's like, what? So I used to hide my Coke. So my books, like I would hide my Coke in my computer back when like computers had like actual laptops. So I used to hide my Coke in my computer and I would also hide it in one of my books. So I'd have like 2 books standing up and then I'd have 1 book totally flat. And then I'd used to put Coke in like the flat book. And I remember I was like, bro, bring me my geography book. I have Coke there. Keep the book flat and don't open it because it will all come out. So just hold it flat the whole time and bring it over here. So he brings me my geography book and I open it and I start doing lines in the infirmary and I start doing Coke and I feel like a little better. And then the lady's like, you haven't thrown up in a while. You're good to go. And I'm like, no, I really still feel sick. She's like, well, you haven't thrown up. You need to leave. So I leave. We have an emergency hall of flag. Like, so there's like a hall that's called the Hall of Flags, which is like this giant hall where we do like, so we do like formations down there. So there's like a random emergency Hall of Flag meeting where the entire school needs to go down and meet. And I'm like, what the fuck? And the president of the school is speaking. And I'm like, fuck. I don't wear what I'm supposed to wear. I wear like my like gym clothes basically. And I tell my major like, oh, I just got out of the infirmary. I'm still sick. And he's like, boy, you better get in formation. So I get in formation or whatever. And the president of the school is making this speech. And I start to feel nauseous again. And I fucking throw up in front of the entire school. And I remember when I puked once, everyone goes, ew. And they all make this line. And then like they all like spread out in a circle around me. And they go, ew. And then I threw up again. And everyone goes, ew. And they spread out further. And then I threw up again. And everyone goes, ew. And they all like spread out another line. And the last thing I puked was like this giant piece of ham that like I didn't even chew. And I remember it just like flopped on the floor. I remember thinking like, fuck, they're going to know I did drugs. Like people are starting to notice like this looks so bad. I just threw up in front of the entire school. Like imagine like this fucking kid just throws up while your entire school's having like a fucking meeting with the president of the school. And they like sent me back to the infirmary and I remember they called my parents. And I remember when they called my parents, I thought they were calling them to be like, you know, your son's on drugs, we're kicking him out or something. And they called my parents and were like, I'm sorry, he has a bug. It's been going around. He's not feeling good, you know. And my parents called me all worried, like, oh, I heard you were sick. Are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm okay. I kept doing Coke. And on one of my trips home, I was at this party. I'm ninth grade at some party. And like at this point, I think like parties are lame. Like, I don't know. I'm not like really into partying. And I'm at like some party and I meet this kid who's friends with like my brother. He hears that I do coke and he's like, I heard you could get really good coke. I mean, I only do good coke. What do you mean? And he was like, bro, I know this crack house and I know this guy who wants to buy it. And I remember thinking like, crack house? Like, why the fuck would I go to a crack house? And he was like, you could sell your coke there. And I thought I was like the king of drugs. But this kid was talking about a crack house. Crack? Like, what the fuck is a crack house? And I remember he was like, I'll take you there. And you can sell these people coke. And I was just like, okay, whatever. So I remember like, I buy like an 8-ball. And we go to this neighborhood. It's called Shady Banks. And it's on Davie Boulevard at 95. And we go into this neighborhood, and there's an episode with Eve, and she's one of the people that I met at this house. I'm still in ninth grade, and I go to this house, and you go into this neighborhood, and you follow it all the way down. And then right when you think it ends, it turns to the right. And then right when you think it's going to end, there's like this weird fence with a dirt road that says like, keep off property. And then there's like all these trees that overhang and like the highway is right above your head, the 95 highway. And you go down this little dirt road and there's like more trees. And then you look and there's like the intercoastal where like people dock their boats and shit. And then there's like this little house with like a little circular driveway with like a tree in the middle that's like super overgrown where like you could tell no one's really taking care of this property for years. There's a screened-in door. You open the screened-in patio door. Then there's like a regular lock. And then above it, there's like a padlock. And then above it, there's like another lock. There's like 3 locks on this door. And we knock and I hear someone say, who is it? And he's like, it's me, Ryan. He's like, Ryan? He's like, yeah, it's Ryan. And that was my friend's name. He's like, let us in. And he's like, who's we? He's like, I'm here with my friend, the one I told you about. And he opens the door and we walk into this house and there's not much furniture. There's like a little bit of furniture. It looks like, you know, a couple people are living there. There's like a mattress in one of the rooms. The pool in the back is green. There's like one TV in the living room. There's a couch that doesn't look like someone bought it for the house. It looks like someone just brought it over one day. It doesn't like fit at all. Then there's this table that is like a tree stump bar table that's like really big. I meet this guy and his name is Doc. Well, that's what we call him. And we call him Doc because I was told that he has cancer and he has HIV and he gets all the pills he wants. All the pills he wants. In exchange for the pills, he buys crack. My friend was really into pills. And a lot of people at the time were into pills. And because I had that one bad experience, like I wasn't really trying to do pills. Like when I threw up and got sick, I had done them again. And I just felt nauseous every time I did opiates. And I didn't like that nauseous feeling. And I always did too much. Like people used to tell me to do 1, I'd always do like 3 or 4. And I meet this guy, Doc. He's got like a couple earrings. He's a frail older guy, probably in his 40s. He's wearing like a button-down Hawaiian t-shirt and short shorts and like sandals. And he's got like a dragon on his left arm. And he's got a picture of a tiger, or he's got a tattoo of a tiger on his leg. He's just like is interesting. Like there's just something different about him than like other people I've met. And I look closer at the tattoo, and it's not a tiger, it's a Tigger. Tigger from Winnie the Pooh, and I thought that was funny. And he's like, who's your friend? I told you no more fucking kids here. And I'm just sitting there quiet, and he's like, you know, he's my friend, you know, he's cool, trust me. He's like, no, I told you no more kids here. I'm not fucking babysitting, no more kids. And he's like, you already know what happened. And I didn't know, but there had been a death in the house recently from some other kid who had overdosed. So he was like, no more kids. He was like, no, this is my boy, bro. He's the one who can get coke. And he looked at me and he was like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, I have some. And he was like, well, let's see what you got. And I remember I pulled out my coke And he looked at it and smelled it, and he broke out a line. Without asking, he just did a line of it. And he snorted it off the table. And I remember he had like a long pinky nail, and he was like, that is premium. And I just started laughing. I was like, yeah, I mean, of course. And he was like, can you get more of this? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, I'll take it. So I served him up, and he gave me some money. And he was like, I remember he was like, you want money or pills? And I was like, I want money. What the fuck? I don't want pills. So he gives me money. And he instantly gets a spoon, and he pours some of the Coke on the spoon, and he heats it up with a lighter. And he heats it up, and he pushes it around with this metal paper clip that's pulled out, extended. He starts pushing around the pieces together, and he heats it up on the spoon, and he puts some water in, and he gets it hot. And then when it's all like boiling hot, he gets an ice cube and he leaves the ice cube on the table, and he cools it down with the ice cube and the spoon. And then he pulls out a crack pipe. Crack pipe looks like a glass pen, but a little thicker. He puts the crack on the pipe, and he smokes it. And I remember thinking, like, I would never in a million fucking years do that shit. I can't believe I'm in this fucking house watching this guy smoke crack. Like, what the fuck? And they don't call it crack. No one ever said the word crack. It's called hard. You know, that's just what we call it. And I go back to this house a couple of times. And like my friend Ryan doesn't want to do coke. I keep trying to get him to do coke. He only wants to do pills. He only wants to do Oxy 80s. And I'm like, bro, just do some coke with me. He's like, no, I don't like that stuff. And he only wants to do pills. So I start doing pills with him. I start kind of liking it. And after I stopped getting nauseous, I used to get like excitement when I did them. It wasn't like coke, but I felt really excited and good with them. And I felt good, but it was like being high on coke, but I couldn't talk and go outside. So coke was getting to the point where like I would get lockjaw immediately. I'd fucking be doing it for a day or two, fucking not eating, just feeling like shit. Like I was really getting crazy. But when I started doing pills, I started to be able to function again. And then like out of nowhere, everybody that I knew, like all of my friends that were back like from Pembroke Pines, that went to Pines Charter and Archbishop and Cardinal Gibbons, like all my friends there, they're like people that we knew in our circle, everybody was doing pills. I didn't know anybody not doing pills. I started going to this house and doing pills and buying pills. And I remember the first time I bought pills on my own, I bought 4 Oxy 80s. And I bought them from Doc. And I remember he said, like, don't do this all at once, you'll die. I did them all at once. And I didn't die, obviously, but I could have died, you know, and I got really into pills. Roxy's were like $7. There was this kid, Bobo. His dad, like, was like a real big-time dealer, like selling hundreds of pills, pounds of weed. You know, this kid used to go into his house and pull out bags of weed like it was nothing. Like, he would go inside his dad's house and run into her car and be like, this is all I could get. And I'd be like, what the fuck is that? And he'd have like, he's like, I couldn't get any crippy, but I got a pound of regs. And I'm like, you just stole a pound of regs? Like, we don't even, like, who the fuck even would want a pound of regs? He's like, that's not all. I got this and I got that. And he'd be like, oh, I got like 40 Vicodins. I got like 60 Xanax and I got like 80 Roxys and I got like 40 greens. Greens would be like Oxy 80s. And then he'd be like, and then I also have this. And he'd pull like a little fucking vial of like Coke. And I remember like buying the Coke off him, and it was the funkiest, fireest Coke I've ever done in my life till today. I'm pretty sure it was cut with meth. As soon as I did a bump of it, I could not talk. I couldn't talk for hours. Everyone was like, are you getting out of the car? And I was just stuck in the back seat. And I remember my friend was like, all right, bro, we're all getting out. And I was just like totally stuck. He's like, bro, I'm not leaving the keys for you, so you're going to sit in the car if you don't want to get out. And I remember just being stuck. And he's like, okay, bro. And he left. No AC. I'm just in the back seat finishing this Coke. And I just couldn't move. And everybody was like doctor shopping. It seemed like overnight I went from Coke to pills. And I was just like thrown into this world of like doctor shopping where people would fake an MRI. You'd go to the pain clinic And you'd go to these pain clinics and there'd be like 70 people in line. There'd be fucking golf carts that would pick you up and take you to the clinic because they had to buy the parking lot across the street because there was no parking. And you'd see people's plates, Kentucky, Alabama, Michigan, all these weird plates would be there, like all these out-of-town people strung the fuck out. I was young, so I could never get my own script, but I would teach people how to get a script. They would break me off. So I'd be like, bro, you got to go get an MRI of your back. You got to go to the hospital, get an x-ray. They're going to send you to a referral for an MRI. Then you're going to go to this pain clinic. It's going to be cash only on the first visit. They're going to give you like 120 15s, which are garbage, but they're also going to give you somas. Then they're going to give you Klonopin. Then you're going to take all that shit. You're going to fucking sell it. And then if you keep going, you're going to say you keep having more pain. Then they're going to start giving you the Roxy 30s, which are what you really want. Then once you start getting Roxys, you can start asking for like 40s, and then like they'll start giving you 80s. And if you can get 80s and 30s and 40s and Somas and Xans and Klonopin, shit, like now you're really fucking balling out. And Doc had it all. Doc had every pill you could ever imagine all the time, nonstop, and he would get cool shit. He would get fucking morphine lollipops. I remember I'd be over there. He'd be like, oh, I got something special for you kids today. And he'd have morphine lollipops. He'd have liquid oxy. I remember this one time me and Ryan were doing, like we bought all this liquid oxy thinking it would like fuck us up more. And I remember we were like doing like drops of it under her tongue and not feeling anything. And I remember I had spilt some on his shirt. And he's like, fuck, I spilled some on my shirt. And I remember I was like, bro, take your shirt off. And he was like, what? I'm like, bro, take that shirt off. And I cut out a piece of the shirt and I ate it. Like, that's how crazy I was. I was like, I'm not letting that go to waste. Talking about, like, my relationship with my parents, like, my relationship with my parents was non-existent. You know, I really didn't even think about them. I would go home and they would scream and yell and I would leave. And I would go home and my dad would scream and yell and I would leave. I would say, yeah, sure, yeah, sure. And then as soon as the coast was clear, I was back to doing the same shit. My dad started screaming and yelling and breaking shit, and my mom was crying, and my sister was worried, and my brother was like, what the fuck's wrong with Bryan? And my brother is so crazy. And this is still 9th grade. And one day I go to Doc's house, and I get served up by my drug dealer, and he skimps me, and this dude, like, skimps me like a gram. And I was like, damn, bro, what the fuck? And I called him and he like apologized because he had been serving me up a line. He's like, oh, I'm sorry, bro, I'll come back later. So normally I would try to save some to like make money, but I got skimped already and I thought he was coming back soon to bring me the other gram. I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to do it all. So I just do it all like really fast. It's probably supposed to be an 8-ball and I got like 2.4 grams or something. And I start coming down hard, and I just feel like when you come down from coke, it's like the worst feeling ever. And there's this guy, Richard, there. Doc isn't home, so like it was normal for like 6 people to be at his house and no one to be home. And there's this guy, Richard, there. Richard is probably 50 years old with no front teeth. I've never seen him to ever have a shirt on or shoes or socks. This guy walks around shirtless in shorts and no shoes and long hair, and he's tan. But not tan because, like, he gets tans. Tans because, like, he gets fucked up on beer and falls asleep outside. He's basically a homeless person, you know? And he's at the house. I had given him a line of Coke. And I was like, you want a line of Coke? And he said, does the bear shit in the woods? I remember thinking, like, what does that mean? And I was like, so you want it or not? And he just came over and did a line. And when I started coming down, he was smoking crack. And I remember looking at him like, you know, like just infatuated that like what crack was. It was just so weird watching someone smoke crack. Like I've seen it on like documentaries and stuff. I was coming down off the coke. I had ran out. My dealer wasn't coming. He said, I'll get with you later. And he was like, you want to hit this? And I remember I said, does the bear shit in the woods? Well, for those of you that don't know, bears always shit in the woods. And I smoked crack for the first time, and I was 14 years old in 9th grade. You know, crack really, really, really fucked me up. It is something that the moment I did it, I knew that I would struggle with it for the rest of my life. When I held that hit in and my ears started ringing and my chest started pumping, I was fucking sold. I wanted to get married to it. I wanted to get a matching tattoo. I wanted to fucking move in with it. I wanted to do this forever. This was what I've been looking for. And I was like totally in way over my head. And I remember Doc walked in. He had like 3 or 4 people with him. They were at some fucking club or some shit. And he looks at me and he could tell something's up. And he's like, what's going on here? And Richard was laughing. And I was just like stuck. He had got that I had smoked. And I remember he was like, here, I'm going to let you hit this. And I remember he packed the pipe. He had a straw and he was like, I'm going to shotgun it to you. And I remember him taking a big hit. And he was like, I'm going to shotgun it to you. And then we're just going to drop to the ground. So he blew the smoke into my lungs. And then we started like falling to the ground. And I fell to the ground. And I was fucking so high. And then he was just laughing. And then I was just staring at his crack pipe. And he was like, I'm going to give you some. And I was just staring. And he was like, look, hang on. And I was just like, let me get a hit. And he was like, hang on. I'm going to put some more on it. And you can have it, okay? And when he put more on it and he gave it to me. And he taught me how to rock it back and forth. And you puff on it. And you get that shit melted on the chore. And he taught me how to push it through when it gets all chored up. And I'll never forget what he said. He said, looks like we got ourselves a rock star. And what he really meant was, look like we just turned this kid into a crackhead. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to part 1 of Hell Has an Entrance, sharing my story over the next 4 weeks. Remember, if you would like to leave a question for me to answer on the next podcast, go to your Apple Podcast and leave a 5-star rating with your question in the review. Please tell a friend and a family member to subscribe, rate, and review. Look us up on Instagram at Hell Has an Exit. Shout out to the Dust Brothers, Miles and Jordan. You guys killed it. Thank you so much. If you guys have any other issues or questions, you can always go to unitedrecoveryproject.com. They have a 24-hour hotline if you're struggling. And with that, I'll see you guys next week. Thank you. This show is not affiliated with any specific 12-step program. If you or a loved one is struggling with an addiction, please find a local 12-step meeting. If you believe you may need detox or drug treatment of any kind, please call 888-699-9395 to speak to a specialist. The show is sponsored by United Recovery Project, a state-of-the-art drug and alcohol rehab facility. You can visit our website at unitedrecoveryproject.com.